It was a Tuesday evening in early March when I found the shirt. I remember that because it was still cold outside. Not quite winter, not quite spring, the kind of damp, gray weather that settles into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. I was upstairs, digging through our linen closet looking for a fresh towel. That was all. Just a towel. Instead, my hand brushed against something that didn't belong. It wasn't a towel or a robe or anything I recognized. It was fabric thicker, smoother. When I pulled it out, I stood there staring at it for longer than I'd like to admit. A men's dress shirt. Dark navy. Slim fit. Clearly expensive and definitely not mine. I held it up just to be sure. Size medium. I wear a large. The cuffs were a little frayed, but in a way that said this shirt had been worn a lot. It had a scent too. Cologne. Sharp, musky, and far more polished than anything I owned. And that's when my stomach sank. The linen closet was ours, mine and Sarah's. Nobody else used it. We didn't have roommates or guests staying with us. Just us two. So there was no good reason for that shirt to be there. Not rolled up behind the extra pillowcases. Not folded into the towels like an afterthought. Nothing about it made sense. Except it did. I just wasn't ready to admit it. I walked downstairs slowly, holding the shirt like it was radioactive. Sarah was on the couch, curled up in her gray blanket with her knees tucked under her. Her face was lit up by the glow of her phone screen. Probably Instagram or Pinterest. The TV was on, but muted. Some baking competition was playing in the background, one of those shows she always kept on while scrolling. I stood there for a few seconds, watching her. She hadn't heard me come down. Then I said, "Hey, what's this?" She looked up. Her eyes flicked to the shirt, then back to me, and for a half second, just a sliver of a moment, something passed over her face. A blink of recognition. Not surprise, not confusion. Recognition. But just as quickly, it was gone. "Oh," she said, waving it off with a lazy smile. "That? It must have gotten mixed up with my stuff at the gym." She said it so casually, like I'd asked her why the mail was still on the counter. I kept staring at her. "The gym," I repeated, keeping my tone even. Neutral. Non-threatening. "Yeah, I went to yoga last week, remember? I changed in the locker room. It was packed. People throw their stuff everywhere. Someone probably tossed it into the wrong cubby, and I didn't notice it when I grabbed my stuff." That was her explanation. Neat. Clean. Too clean. She looked back down at her phone like the conversation was over. But it wasn't. Not for me. I stood there for another few seconds, still holding the shirt. I wanted to ask more. How did it end up in our linen closet? Why didn't she mention it before? Who even wears cologne to the gym? But I didn't. I just nodded like an idiot and said, "Huh, weird." Then I dropped the shirt onto the laundry basket and walked into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, but I didn't drink it. My hand was shaking a little. Here's the thing. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because Sarah and we had history. We met in college, back when we were both wide-eyed and trying to figure out who we were going to be. I remember the first time I saw her. Bright red scarf, boots with little silver buckles, the kind of laugh that made people turn their heads. She lit up every room. And somehow, by some miracle, she picked me. We dated for 5 years before getting married. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least I thought we were. We built a life together. Bought a modest house in the suburbs. Got a golden retriever we named Benny. Took annual trips, mostly road trips because flights were expensive, but they were ours. We had routines. Traditions. Pizza every Friday. Long walks on Sundays. Little notes she'd leave in my work bag. Inside jokes about the weird neighbors. So when I stood there holding that shirt, foreign fabric, foreign scent, foreign story, I wasn't just questioning a single moment. I was questioning everything. And what haunted me most wasn't the shirt itself. It was the way she said it. That laugh. That shrug. That too casual tone, like I was the crazy one for even asking. But her eyes. They told a different story. They darted. Just for a second. That was enough. The next morning, over breakfast, she said something I'll never forget. I was standing at the sink, rinsing my coffee mug, when she looked at me from across the kitchen island and said, "Do you ever think we just settled?" I turned, confused. "What do you mean?" She stirred her oatmeal like it had done something to offend her. "I don't know. Just, sometimes I wonder if this is it. You and me. Waking up, going to work, watching reruns, doing laundry. It's all so predictable." I didn't know how to respond. We'd never had a conversation like that. Not in that tone. Not with that distant look in her eyes, like she wasn't really talking to me, but trying to convince herself of something. "I thought we liked predictable," I said finally. "I mean, that's what we talked about when we bought this place, right? Stability, routine." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I want more." More. The word echoed in my head for hours after she left for work. More what? More excitement? More passion? More attention? More. Someone else? And once that thought entered my mind, it refused to leave. I kept going over the last few months. The new gym schedule. The yoga sessions that seemed to stretch later and later into the evening. The locked phone. The shift in her wardrobe, subtle but noticeable. She wore heels more often. Bought new lingerie. She hadn't worn that stuff for me in months. And the cologne. That damn cologne. I could still smell it. Not in the shirt anymore, but in our house. On her jacket. On her skin sometimes. Faint but unmistakable. It wasn't mine. It wasn't a perfume. It was a man's cologne. But every time I caught the scent, I told myself it was nothing. That maybe it was someone at work. Or yes, the gym. Maybe she'd brushed up against someone by accident. Maybe. I had been building a wall of maybes for months. But that shirt? That tore the wall down. Still, I didn't confront her again. Not yet. Because if she was lying, I needed more than suspicion. I needed clarity. Proof. I didn't want to become the paranoid husband who spiraled over nothing. I wanted to be sure. And ironically, that meant pretending everything was fine. So I did. For the next few days, I played the part. I laughed at her jokes. I helped with dinner. I kissed her goodbye in the morning and said, "Love you," with the same tone I'd always used. But something shifted. Not just in her, but in me. I used to dread the silence between us. Now I listened to it. I paid attention to how quickly she'd shut down conversations, how often she disappeared into the other room with her phone, how she'd brush off questions with smiles that didn't reach her eyes. And in that silence, I began to see what I hadn't wanted to see. Sarah was drifting. Not physically, she was still here, still making coffee in the morning, still watching our shows, still tossing her laundry in with mine. But emotionally, she was gone. By Friday, I realized something chilling. The emptiness I had felt in our marriage for months, it no longer belonged to me. It belonged to her. She had taken it with her. And wherever she had gone, she didn't want me to follow. After that week, I became someone I never thought I'd be. A quiet observer in my own marriage. The kind of person who watches more than he speaks. I didn't want to admit that I didn't trust her. But the truth is, I didn't. Not anymore. I started noticing things. First, it was small stuff. Her phone, for one. Sarah used to leave it on the counter, on the coffee table, even face up on the couch while she did laundry. Now, it never left her side. Not when she showered, not when she slept. She started turning the screen away from me, flipping it over like muscle memory. I told myself I was imagining things, but the pattern was too consistent to ignore. One night I reached for it, innocently, or at least I tried to make it look that way. We were on the couch watching a movie, and her phone buzzed next to her leg. I reached over. "Want me to check that?" She snapped, "No, I've got it." Faster than I'd ever heard her respond to anything. She fumbled with the phone like it was a live grenade. I watched her unlock it. There was a new passcode. I'd known her old one for years. Same digits as our anniversary. She didn't offer the new one. Didn't say a word about changing it. And just like that, another block fell into place. Later that week, she mentioned going to a new yoga class. "It's across town," she said, pulling her hair into a loose bun. "Starts later, But it's supposed to be amazing. Late class? I asked, trying to keep it casual. What time will you be back? She shrugged. Depends. Sometimes the girls grab smoothies afterward. I'll probably be back around 10. She kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door. It was 6:40. I stood there in the hallway for a full minute, keys in hand, before I decided to follow. Now look, I know how that sounds. I never wanted to be that guy. The one who tails his wife like he's in a bad crime drama. But something deep in my gut told me I needed to see it for myself. Needed the truth, whatever it was. I didn't even know what I was looking for. All I knew was, she was pulling away from me, and I had no idea where she was going. I waited 5 minutes, then got in my car. I didn't follow close, just enough to keep her tail lights in view. She didn't go to the yoga studio. She didn't even go in the direction of it. She drove 20 minutes east, toward the city. Not our city, downtown Chicago. Expensive valet parking, high-rise hotels, fancy cocktail lounges. Eventually, she pulled into a dimly lit parking garage next to a boutique hotel I'd never seen before. I parked a block away and waited, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they hurt. I saw her walk out, her ponytail swaying behind her, wearing yoga pants and a hoodie like she was headed to a workout. Except, she wasn't alone. A man was waiting for her by the entrance. Tall, tan jacket, polished shoes, confident posture. He leaned in and kissed her on the cheek. She smiled. They walked into the lobby together, and I just sat there, frozen. Every rational thought fled my mind. I didn't know who he was, didn't know where they were going. But I knew one thing with perfect clarity. She lied to me, again, and she wasn't even trying that hard to cover it up. I drove home in silence. My chest felt hollow. There was no confrontation, no shouting match, just the growing sense that the foundation I thought we were standing on had already crumbled, and I'd somehow missed the fall. That night, she came home a little after 10, just like she said she would. She smelled like vanilla lotion and that same faint hint of expensive cologne. Her hair was slightly damp, shower, maybe, or maybe she just wanted it to look like she'd been to a workout. Yoga was good, she said, sliding off her shoes. Feeling sore already. I nodded. Glad you had fun. She smiled. You okay? Yeah. I lied. Just tired. She kissed me goodnight and walked upstairs. And the second she disappeared around the corner, I opened my laptop and logged into our bank account. I don't know what made me do it. Instinct, maybe. But I needed something to hold on to. Something real. What I found chilled me. She'd been making charges at restaurants we'd never visited together. Upscale places. Sushi bars. Italian bistros. A steakhouse I knew damn well she'd never walk into unless someone else was picking up the tab. I clicked on each charge. Studied the times. Matched them to her yoga nights. They lined up perfectly. The puzzle wasn't just forming anymore, it was done. The picture was right in front of me. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But once I did, I couldn't unsee it. I started to think back. Months, even a year before. The fights. They used to be rare, stupid things. Like whether to get a real Christmas tree or a fake one. But lately they turned mean. Petty. She snapped at me for forgetting to take out the trash. For putting my shoes in the wrong spot. For breathing too loud while she worked on her laptop. It used to be funny. Now it felt loaded. And it was always my fault. You never listen. You're always working. Do you even care what I want anymore? First, I thought she was stressed. Work had been heavy for both of us. I figured we just needed a weekend away. Some time to reconnect. But now, I realized something else. The arguments weren't about what I did wrong. They were about justifying what she was doing behind my back. She needed to convince herself I was the problem. Because otherwise, she'd have to admit she was betraying someone who didn't deserve it. And here's the cruel part. I still tried. I still brought home flowers on random Fridays. I still asked about her day, massaged her shoulders when she said she was tired, made her tea when she had a headache. I gave her softness, and she met it with detachment. I once read somewhere that people don't just wake up and cheat. They drift, bit by bit. They build a new world parallel to the old one, And eventually, they step through a door they can't close behind them. Sarah had stepped through, and I was still standing in the hallway, wondering why it was so damn quiet. One night, I stayed up late. She'd gone to bed early, claimed she was exhausted. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through photos on my phone. Pictures of us from years ago. Road trips. Birthdays. Her laugh frozen in time. Then I remembered something. Emily, Sarah's closest friend since college. They used to talk every day. But lately, that had changed. I hadn't seen Emily around in weeks. Months, maybe. Something had gone quiet between them. And suddenly, I had a hunch. I sent Emily a message. "Hey, I need to ask you something. Please don't tell Sarah." She didn't reply right away. But when she did, it came in a single sentence. "Can we talk in person?" Emily and I met at a small cafe off Michigan Avenue. The kind of place where conversations disappeared under the low hum of espresso machines and soft indie music. It was rainy that afternoon. A slow drizzle that made the windows fog, just enough to blur the city outside. I sat near the back, nursing a bitter coffee that I barely touched. My stomach was in knots. She walked in 10 minutes late, her face tight, her lips pressed into a thin line like she already regretted agreeing to meet. Her coat was damp at the shoulders, and she looked tired. Tired in a way I hadn't seen before. She spotted me, gave a faint nod, and sat across from me. Neither of us spoke for a moment. It was awkward. Emily had always been part of our life, our dinners, our game nights, our road trips. She was Sarah's ride or die, and I'd always liked her. But now, sitting across from her, I realized something else. She knew, and maybe had for a while. "Thanks for coming," I said finally, my voice low. She nodded, her eyes darting toward the door, like she was checking for Sarah. "I don't have a lot of time, Michael." I leaned forward. "I just need the truth. That's it." Emily sighed and looked down at her coffee. "I didn't want to get involved. This isn't my place." "I think we're past that." Her lips tightened. Then, quietly, she said, "I tried to talk her out of it. Months ago. Before things got serious. I didn't move. I just listened. She was unhappy. Or that's what she kept telling me. Said she felt invisible. Like the life you two built wasn't what she thought it would be. I kept telling her to go to counseling, to talk to you, to fix it. But she didn't want to fix it. Not really." I swallowed hard. "How long?" Emily hesitated, then answered, "It started with dating apps. She didn't meet anyone in person at first. Just talked. Said it made her feel wanted. I thought it was a phase, honestly. But then she started going on actual dates. Lunches at first. Then dinners. Then hotels. My chest felt like it had caved in. She told me she needed to figure out who she was without you," Emily continued, unable to meet my eyes. "That she didn't want to look like the bad guy. She said if she left suddenly, people would blame her. She wanted to control the story." "What story?" "That you grew apart. That you were too focused on work. That she tried, but you didn't notice. She even practiced how she'd say it like a script. She wanted sympathy." The words didn't even sting. Not in the usual way. They just confirmed everything I'd been piecing together for weeks. I stared down at the table. "So it's not just one guy?" She winced. "It's one now. Coworker. Been going on for a few months. She says it's serious. She told me they meet during work trips. One of those hotels you saw her near? That's their usual place." I leaned back, blinking slowly, trying to absorb it all. "And you went along with it?" "No," Emily said sharply. "I kept telling her to stop. I even threatened to tell you once. But then she asked me to cover for her, to lie, to say she was with me. That's when I cut her off." Her voice broke a little then, and she wiped under her eye quickly. "I hate that I didn't tell you sooner. But I didn't know what to do. She was my best friend." "Was?" I repeated. She nodded. Silence hung between us again. 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Regrets. Warnings I never saw. People always talk about red flags, how hindsight makes them glow neon. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes the flags are subtle. Quiet. And by the time you realize what they meant, the damage is already done. Emily pulled something from her purse, a small black notebook. I wasn't going to show you this, but after what she asked me to do, I think you deserve to know. She slid it across the table. I looked at it but didn't touch it. What is this? Her journal. She left it at my place one night. I think she forgot it was in her bag. I didn't mean to read it, but I opened it, thinking it was mine. I saw your name. I saw his. I opened the notebook slowly. Inside were pages of Sarah's handwriting. Neat, deliberate, strangely calm. She wrote about feeling stuck, about craving freedom, about needing to exit the marriage with grace. She had mapped out strategies, literal bullet points, on how to soften the blow, how to appear composed, how to retain control of the narrative. One line read, "Michael doesn't suspect. I have time to pivot this slowly. People will believe me if I play it right." Another said, "Need to get Emily on board. If she vouches for me, no one will question it." Another, "Hotel on Wabash, use work conference as excuse. Rehearse details in advance." I stopped reading. My hands were trembling. "This is calculated," I said. "I know," Emily whispered. "It's not just an affair. It's a campaign." She reached into her bag again and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is the guy. His name's Aaron. He's in her department. Married, 2 kids." I stared at the photo. Him at some corporate event. Clean-shaven. Confident. The kind of guy who probably always knew what to say. The kind of guy who didn't mind wrecking other people's homes if it meant feeding his ego. "I'm sorry, Michael," Emily said, standing up. "I should have told you sooner." I didn't answer. My jaw was clenched too tight to speak. She hesitated. "What are you going to do?" I folded the photo and the journal, slipping them into my coat. "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to react. Not emotionally. That's what she's expecting." Emily nodded. "If you need anything at all, I'll reach out," I said, though I wasn't sure I would. She left. I stayed in that cafe for another hour, watching the rain blur the world outside, thinking about how long I'd been blind, about how much effort Sarah had put into dismantling our life behind my back while keeping up the appearance of normalcy. It wasn't just betrayal. It was performance. The nights she cried, saying she felt distant, the conversations she initiated about how we drifted. They weren't invitations to fix things. They were pre-written exit ramps, and I had missed them all. When I got home, the house felt different. Smaller, colder. Like I was walking through a version of my life that had already ended. I just hadn't been notified yet. I sat in the living room for hours, not crying, not pacing, just thinking. And then I got up, grabbed a notepad and began writing a list. A list of everything I'd need. Evidence, records, names, dates. Sarah had her narrative. Now I was going to write mine. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw her things out the window or punch a wall or collapse in the shower like some tragic movie scene. Instead, I became still. Still and quiet and methodical. There's a moment when pain becomes something colder. When the chaos finally burns out and leaves behind this strange, focused clarity. I hit that point somewhere between rereading Sarah's journal and flipping through the bank statements again. I realized I'd been so busy asking why that I'd forgotten to ask, what now? And that's when everything changed. I started with the obvious, my digital footprint, her devices, our shared accounts. I opened our family laptop, technically hers, but she often left it in the kitchen, logged in, assuming I'd never snoop. And until now, I hadn't. But loyalty only stretches so far. The first thing I did was install a backup tool. Quiet, undetectable. Every file she touched, every email, every draft or download, it would be duplicated to a secure folder on a drive she didn't know existed. I then set up a secondary email account, Burner, encrypted. I used it to create backups of our financial records, chat logs, and photos. Anything that felt off went into a folder labeled insurance. Because if Sarah was planning an exit strategy, then so was I. Next came the bank records. I dug deeper. Turns out the fancy dinners were only the surface. She had a separate credit card account, one I hadn't seen before, registered to her name only, but linked to our joint funds. I traced it through our online banking interface, hidden behind a drop-down menu I'd never thought to open. And that's when I saw them. Hotel stays, twice a month, like clockwork. Different names, but same locations. Same days, usually Thursdays or Fridays, when she claimed to have late meetings. Some of the rooms were booked under aliases, her middle name, different last name, but the billing address matched ours. It was amateur-level hiding. She hadn't expected me to look. I documented everything. *TS, transaction IDs, dates, matching them to the notes in her journal and text message receipts from Emily. I wasn't just guessing anymore. I had facts, and with every detail I uncovered, the person I used to be, naive, trusting, maybe even spineless, died a little more. I also started recording. Nothing illegal, just conversations around the house. I bought a small audio recorder, the kind journalists use for interviews. I kept it on me whenever I knew she'd be home. I didn't need confessions, I needed tone, emotion, context, because this wasn't just about catching her. It was about preparing for the fallout. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney, not one of those half-baked budget guys from TV commercials, but a professional. A woman named Dana Carrington, highly rated, sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. The kind of person who didn't flinch at betrayal. We *P***nized it. Her office was in a quiet downtown building, all glass and steel and calm energy. She didn't smile much, but she listened. I told her everything. The journal, the charges, the affair. When I finished, she asked just one question. "Do you want revenge or results?" "Both," I said. She smiled faintly. "Good answer." We talked strategy. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state. That meant Sarah's affair wouldn't get me a bigger slice of the pie, legally speaking. But with the right evidence, we could establish misconduct. Leverage, narrative, control. Especially if we framed her behavior as financially deceptive, which it was. Dana told me to keep collecting. "Don't confront her yet," she warned. "Let her think she's winning. The more arrogant she gets, the sloppier she becomes." And so I played along. I became the ideal husband. I cooked her favorite meals, asked about her day, gave her space when she said she was tired, smiled at her jokes, bought her a new charger when hers mysteriously stopped working, after I'd cloned her old one. She thought I was settling back into old habits, letting things go. She had no idea I was building a case. Every late-night work event, every Uber trip, every dinner that didn't include me, I logged it. I matched locations to photos she posted online, comments from friends, timestamps on social media stories she didn't think I followed. I even started tracking her location, not through her phone, but through our shared Google account that she'd forgotten was still synced to mine. And it was all there. Every lie, every rendezvous, every excuse. But the real surprise came from her email. One night after she fell asleep early, claiming exhaustion again, I sat in the dark living room, the only light coming from the laptop screen. I logged into her Gmail through a private window. Same password as always. She hadn't changed it. Not that one. She had an entire folder labeled Personal Growth. Inside were threads, emails exchanged between her and a man named Aaron. The same name Emily had mentioned. The same man from the photo. The coworker. Their messages were long. *mate. Sometimes romantic. Other times strange. They talked about alignment, about matching energy, about escaping traditional expectations. They quoted podcasts and self-help gurus and wrote paragraphs about holding space for each other. It was spiritualized cheating, but cheating all the same. In one email, she wrote, "Michael is kind. He's generous. But he doesn't understand who I'm becoming. You do. I don't want to hurt him, but I won't shrink myself to stay safe anymore." I read that line a dozen times. Shrink myself? This woman, who had been cushioned, cared for, given every ounce of my patience for over a decade, Was writing about shrinking herself? No. What she wanted wasn't growth. It was escape without consequence. And I wasn't going to give her that. So I copied every email, every thread, every digital breadcrumb. By the end of that week, I had a drive packed with evidence. And still I waited, because the final move had to be perfect. One evening, Sarah came home later than usual. Her makeup was fresh. Her coat was new, cashmere, double-breasted, definitely not from Target. And her neck? A new necklace. Gold, subtle, tasteful. Not from me. She kissed me absent-mindedly and walked straight to the bathroom, where I heard her humming. When she emerged, she saw me on the couch with my laptop and smiled. "You working late again?" "Yeah," I replied, closing the screen. "Just catching up." She kissed my head like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just spent hours with another man, like I was the fool. But I didn't flinch. I smiled up at her and said, "You deserve a weekend away, maybe with your friends. You've been working so hard." Her face lit up, and I knew she'd take the bait. That weekend, she told me she was going on a girls' trip, yoga retreat, no cell service, just time to reset. I nodded and helped her pack. What she didn't know was that I already knew where she was really going: Wabash Street. Same hotel, same man. And this time I hired someone to follow her. Discreetly, professionally, camera in hand. When she left the house, I didn't watch her go. I sat down, poured myself a drink, and opened Dana's number on my phone. Because when Sarah came back, I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to end this. On my terms. I planned everything down to the minute. The confrontation wasn't going to be a shout fest or a sob story. It wasn't going to happen in a moment of weakness, like when she walked through the door pretending everything was fine. I wanted it clean, surgical, no raised voices, no bargaining, just facts. The day she came back from her retreat, the weather was unusually warm for early spring. I remember the way the sunlight hit the kitchen window, pouring over the countertops as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She rolled her suitcase in around 4:20 p.m. I was sitting at the dining table, facing the door, sipping coffee like I hadn't been staring at the clock for the last half hour. "Hey," she said casually, setting her bag down. "Miss me?" She wore a dusty pink hoodie, some loose joggers, and that same necklace. The one I hadn't bought her. Her hair was pulled up, but she was wearing foundation and eyeliner. Odd choice for a yoga retreat, but then again, everything about her retreat was fiction. "Welcome back," I said. My voice was calm, measured. She smiled. "The place was beautiful. Seriously, you should have seen the lake. And no cell service, felt kind of amazing to unplug, you know?" I nodded, holding her gaze. I'm sure it was unforgettable. She didn't notice the edge in my voice, or maybe she did, and she was already bracing for something. Either way, she walked over, leaned down, and kissed the top of my head. I didn't flinch. She moved toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower. Feel gross from the ride back." "Before you do that," I said, not raising my voice, "I need you to sit down." She paused. There was something about the way I said it, firm, unshakable, that made her turn back around. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What's going on?" I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit, please." She looked at me for a long second, then slowly made her way over, pulling the chair out like she was preparing to be interrogated at a police station. When she sat, I reached behind me and placed a folder on the table. Just a simple black folder. Inside it, photos, receipts, emails, screensh *TS. The tip of the iceberg. She didn't touch it at first, just stared at it. "What is that?" she asked, her voice low. I leaned forward. "Proof." "Proof of what?" she said quickly, too quickly. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes searched my face like she was trying to calculate how much I knew. So I gave her the number. 38 nights, I said. "That's how many times you've stayed at hotels since last November. That's how many charges I found between your hidden credit card and our joint account. 38 nights you told me you were working late or at a retreat or grabbing smoothies after yoga." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. She shut it again. Aaron, I said. From your office. Married. 2 kids. I've got photos of him holding your bag as you checked into the Wabash Hotel. Twice this month. I've got emails from your personal growth folder. I've got a location log synced from our Google accounts. I've got *TS of your text messages. I've got your handwritten journal. Now her face turned pale. You broke into my journal? She asked, voice rising slightly. No, I said. You left it at Emily's. She read it. She told me everything. Sarah froze. Her eyes flicked to the folder again, but she still didn't touch it. That's a violation, she said, voice trembling now. You invaded my privacy. I laughed once, just once, and shook my head. You planned an affair for months. Wrote strategies for how to leave me while looking like the victim. You asked your best friend to cover for you, then cut her off when she wouldn't. And I violated your privacy? She looked down at her lap, silent. I leaned in slightly. You could have just left, Sarah. You didn't have to lie. You didn't have to manipulate me into thinking our problems were normal. You didn't have to gaslight me into believing I was the one slipping away. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't know how to leave, she whispered. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't want to look like the bad guy. She finally reached for the folder, opened it, and started flipping through the documents. Photos, email prints, receipts. She moved slower with each page, her breathing shallow. When she reached the back and saw the final item, a copy of the hotel bill from 3 nights ago with her signature, she closed the folder and pushed it away. There was a long silence. Then she said it. The line I knew was coming. It's not what you think. That sentence right there, that tired script. I nodded slowly. You know, for weeks I hoped I was wrong. I really did. I hoped I was just paranoid, that I was making things up in my head. But now I wish I'd stopped hoping sooner. Her voice came out small. Are you going to divorce me? I let that sit between us for a moment. Then I said, I already hired a lawyer. The papers